So she asked me to moderate. So why don't we start with the first discussion item on here, which is the Library Learning Commons curriculum work plans for spring 2023.
Okay, good morning again. I'm glad to have my team here to help go through these different agenda items, updates that we haven't talked about recently on the Board of Ed, because I feel like we've had a lot of time in Board of Ed meetings recently, sharing a lot of curriculum work. These are some new things. So the first thing that we wanted to share with you is the work that the LLC, the Library Learning Commons teachers, are doing in terms of curriculum. One of the things that we were actually talking about recently with our whole curriculum team is how the vision of perhaps what the world has of a library media specialist has really changed since we were kids. When we were kids, the role looked more like a person reading a book to a group of kids sitting around in a circle. And now it has really, really changed. And that person in every building has become the digital support person and the digital citizenship teacher, among other things as well. So if you remember this past year, starting in September, that team implemented digital citizenship curriculum K-12. That is obviously a big need for our students, especially as they progress through the ownership of their Chromebook, with more and more alone time, I guess, taking it home and back to school than they do in the early elementary years. So that is going very, very well. And I believe the community has had an opportunity to see some of the amazing work that those teachers are doing as a result of that curriculum. And really what this team is doing and what this role is beyond teaching digital citizenship. It really gives kids a chance to experience STEM and STEAM outside of the classroom. So what we're ready for next is working specifically at the K-2 area and designing STEAM curriculum for this group of teachers and students when they have library media twice in a 6-day cycle. There are many, many standards and experiences that we are continuing to work to implement into the elementary school curriculum. And you can only imagine all the standards that we want students to be engaged in a joyful, meaningful way. So this is work that we are planning for the summer, and we are really lucky to have with us some new library media specialists who've had a lot of experience with this type of curriculum writing. And we also have art teachers, one in particular at the elementary level, whose master's is in integrating arts into the curriculum. So together we feel like we have a good plan, and we always have Linda Johnson leading that work in the spring and the summer to have those lessons created and then implemented just as well, and in addition to the digital citizenship lessons. So I'm going to let Linda say more, but one, I just wanted to make sure that we're understanding how that role has changed over time and all that it brings. And then two, the exciting work that's going to follow to continue to build that STEAM relationship for kids during the day. So Linda, why don't you add on a little bit?
Sure, I'd be happy to, Corey. Good morning, everyone. So some of you may have heard me speak about this in the past, and it brings us back to the content and the background knowledge that our students develop through integrated studies curriculum, whether it's a science topic or a social studies topic, and then how they use that knowledge that they gain through a series of very thoughtful lessons that their classroom teacher delivers. So what the vision is that students can take that knowledge that they're learning with their classroom teacher and apply it to the library media experience. So for example, if it is working in the makerspace on either a STEM or a STEAM project, they have that background knowledge to bring to the task. And that's super important because typically with some type of STEM or STEAM activity, students engage with a real world problem that they need to brainstorm ideas around how to solve, develop a plan, if you will. And then depending on the project and the aim of the lesson, they'll actually carry out the design and possibly build that solution to the problem. And then that's where students need the background knowledge of that topic. Jeff and I, we refer that with our NGSS world of disciplinary core ideas, to bring into that project. And then again, as the lesson is intended, students might go back and look at their work, self-reflect, evaluate, and then revise their work as needed. So our goal is to take a look at our curriculum, K-2 to start, look at, okay, what are we teaching through the C3 social studies framework, the NGSS standards, next generation science standards, and where is there a good place to partner up with the digital citizenship curriculum, look at some of the work that we want to do with our computer science standards, and say what makes sense given the developmental stages, ages of the students we're working with.
And also the expertise of the teachers in the library media. So they also, sorry to jump in, but they bring in an experience and a background that is a nice addition to what we're getting from the classroom and the content from the classroom.
So sort of, and just to wrap it up, envisioning a little mini team, maybe by grade level, where we have classroom teacher, we have library media specialist, someone from our art department putting their heads together, a think tank, and then design lessons where they're bringing in their different disciplines, their areas of expertise.
Okay, so that is our plan, that is our work, and we already have examples in the newsletters that you've seen of library media specialists engaging in that work as it is, and now we're trying to formalize it. And this is our plan. Any questions?
Sounds great here. Rachel, Amy, questions? Nope. Looks like we're good. It sounds comprehensive, and I'll say it again. I'm glad we're investing in curriculum again after a long hiatus. It's really good to see. So we'll move on to discussion item B, plans for a parent curriculum website. This sounds awesome.
So when we first got here, I'll begin and then I'll pass it off to my colleagues. So when we first got here, we knew how important it was for parents to get a window into what is happening inside their children's classroom when it comes to curriculum. We put a lot of time and energy, full force, to get that going and to get that up there for parents. The good news is that there have been a lot of changes since that initial big bulk of work. And then the second thing to know is that there would never be anything on a parent website that wasn't absolutely true in every single school. So for example, if we're talking about middle school curriculum, if we're talking about elementary curriculum, we wanted to make sure that what we were putting up on that site was absolutely true for every single school. And if you remember, when we started here, our teachers at the elementary level, for example, had different approaches and used different resources for phonics and for PA. So now that we're all using the same resource, that's part of our revision work, is really helping our parents understand how the implementation of these new resources and that assured experience that we know 100% is happening in each school can be represented on the website. So parents can expect to see that moving forward, there will be a much more representative view of the curriculum that is actually in place in our elementary schools. And that does take time, and the time that we have to work on that is really June, July, and into August, because our teachers are the ones who help us in bringing that to life for parents. So we wanted parents to know that was coming. Jeff and Annie or Linda, any other bits to add to that?
Yeah, some of the work that we do with updating that parent curriculum website, as you can imagine, as the students grow in our district, by the time that they are in high school, they have options for so many courses. So we are always working to make sure that what is up there is the most up to date. And like Corey said, that work does typically happen in the summertime. So that way our most current revisions or changes are out there for parents. And always as a reminder, if parents have a question about what is on there, to reach out to answer any of those questions.
And if I could just add on as well, I'm sorry, Linda, but on the secondary level specifically. So as new courses get revised, I just think it's important for people to know that as we do curriculum revisions to any of the existing courses or any new courses get added, I know there's a few courses at the high school for proposals. As those get written, those will also be added to the parent website so that it's fully clear and transparent what each course at the high school and middle school looks like and what the kids will learn.
And I'll just give an example from the elementary level. Grades 3 through 5 mathematics last summer, we did a lot of work in developing our curriculum guides for our teachers. And then we went to the parent-facing side and revised, updated our guides for 3, 4, 5. Really, truly, it was looking at a different sequence. The same standards were being taught, the same learning outcomes, but making sure that that part of the parent site was up to date.
And as Jeff and Annie both said, in response to the work that's happened at the high school recently, which was a full revision of the program of studies, it is our work this spring to make sure that we continue to represent that work on the website so that parents and students can continue to use it to guide their course selection. The new program of studies, of course, is available to high school students and to 8th graders, but by department, we need to make sure that we're going through our curriculum website to make sure that each of the high school departments can have that displayed as well in detail. Any questions?
Rachel's got one.
Thank you so much. I just want to echo Sean's comments. I mean, the amount of work that this team is doing is just tremendous. I appreciate it as a board member, as a parent, and also the connection to home. I think it is wonderful because that's another layer here. So thank you so much.
So it sounds like you guys have a busy summer so far on the last 2 items on the schedule. So do we show the pathways of some of these things on the curriculum website? So if you've taken this math, you can see at the bottom, you can take that one or that one. That type of stuff shows up there.
Yep, I can jump in for the math side specifically. So on the middle school math side at the bottom, after you see all the curriculum units or all the courses with the unit outlines, at the bottom is that progression document of 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. And then we have the same thing on the high school version for the 9-12. So a parent absolutely should be able to look at that and know the trajectory, because I know the math pathways can get a little complicated because of the number of courses and the number of different individual pathways. So that is on the site.
Great.
The same for humanities.
So I do want to add one thing that we are working on now that we've finished revising the program of studies is making sure that we also share pathways that go across departments. There are so many amazing ways that students can experience an interest area across multiple departments, like graphic design. So knowing that that's the business department, the art department. So that really is our next goal. And I'm not sure how we're going to tab it out for kids, but we're first going to work on helping our counselors visually represent that to students. Because the more that I look at the program of studies, the more I can see those connections. And it shouldn't, I would want as a parent to have that handed to me, someone to coach me through that instead of having to study it and discover it, because it really is a unique way for kids to experience an interest as opposed to just going through a department. And thinking about math and the connection to computer science, and then what that also may interest kids, computer art and design, maybe they're more in the design part of that, or wherever they want to go. That is definitely a growth area and a goal area into this summer. And I know that visual pathway that Jeff is talking about in math, for me, is a very helpful way to process those connections across departments. So hoping to work with some of our own graphic design people and people who are really talented at laying out pathways visually, so that we can provide that to counselors and ultimately to our students and parents, because we don't want them to miss out on all the amazing experiences that you can have as you go through Ridgefield High School based on your interests and based on what one class might lead you to have interest in another.
Sounds good. I know there's a lot of, there has been in recent years, a lot of misdirected energy and trying to understand the math pathway. So I'm glad that that's all being worked out. And I don't know how to visually make that make sense, but hopefully we have smarter people in the district that can do that. Any other questions on item B? Let's move on to one that also has been a lot of misdirected energy. The update on reading waiver for State Department of Education.
So Linda and I and Dr. Kara Tanner did speak to the PTA Council on Friday about this topic. I wanted to give the committee an update. Currently, as we speak, I pulled Linda from a group, very talented group of our coaches who are working on filling in the waiver. And thanks to the leadership of Linda Johnson and her amazing ability to persevere and organize and find clarity, we have an incredible document that is being formed. It's going to be well over 100 pages, and it is very detailed. My positive outcome today, my positive outlook after I reviewed some of her work this morning, is just how valuable it is that we will now have essentially a white paper for the RPS reading curriculum that's being designed. And it really, we're going to have to think about how we can share with the community and how we can share with our parents all the different layers of complexity that really go into the work around reading here, the professional development, and our MTSS system. So that is my very positive take on the time and the human capital that we have put towards this project. I'll let Linda speak to that, and then I'll have one more comment and then take questions. So Linda, anything you want to add to what I just said?
I'll simply start with Corey. Thank you very, very much. I so appreciate your words, and my work is representative of the teachers, all of the teachers and administrators that we have here in Richfield. I was just the engine leading the caboose in all those trains. Yes, we have a team of teachers. Our literacy coaches are working on tackling the 9 prompts. There's, as you may remember, there's 3 parts to the waiver. Part 1 is looking at data centered around certain subgroups. Part 2 is responding to that data and the strategy, the plan structures that we have in place in terms of working with our students who may or may not be reaching certain benchmarks. And then part 3 of the waiver is responding to specific prompts that the state has given us. There are 9 prompts. I led the team through a protocol on how to unpack each question and then how to look for evidence within our curriculum. And let me tell you, there's a lot of outstanding evidence in our reading curriculum model that can answer the 9 prompts. So that is what the team is currently working on. We're packaging that together. And then Corey and I imagine along with Dr. De Silva and some other folks, will read through the whole waiver, put it together and submit it to the state at the end of the month. And from there, we will gladly accept any feedback from other members of the state committee or people in district and make any necessary adjustments so that we can truly submit the best representation of the incredible, excellent work that's happening here in Richfield.
Thank you, Linda, and I'm grateful for that. And again, the continuing to evolve work here. We know that we are always striving each and every day to be our very best so that we can be our best for the needs of our students sitting in front of us. So the second update I'm just going to put out there, and I really haven't heard anything directly from the state. What different leaders have come across in the last week was a report that came out from NYU, the Education Justice Research and Organizing Collaborative. It has an acronym, but you probably haven't heard of it before. And what they published was that 3 of the 7 mandated curriculums required by the state have been found to be culturally damaging based on this study. I don't know what that means, if that means that the state will then change their recommendation, since that was one of the criteria that they're using in the 9 that we have to go through our curriculum for, but I have not heard. We found this out early last week, and we have not heard anything yet from the State Department of Ed. So just there, as this whole process has shown us, there's a lot of changing, a lot of moving parts. But again, I'm thankful for Linda because she's just plugged away, and we will be ready, and we will be proud of what we're submitting on the 28th, and then we will see what happens. Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Rachel, Amy? I'll get a couple out. Do we have any idea how long this waiver will be good for? And eventually, will this waiver have to go away and we have to subscribe to this horrendously designed program?
No, we don't know. We don't even know. We actually submitted another list of questions last week, and we haven't heard back yet. We're not even sure who is going to be reading the waivers. So again, that's a question that we've asked. How long is this good for? I have no idea. There are fears that it will run out, but we haven't been told that. So it's a lot of conjecture and a lot of confusion, which makes us all anxious as we're working here each day, and just continuing to try to be our best for our students. So I don't know.
Susie, I know you met with our legislators. What was their take on this since they voted for it?
So we did meet with our legislators, and we talked about what you just described, which is the right to read legislation and the components of the right to read legislation. And as Corey described, we have backgrounds in reading, that this is important to us. We believe in the components of the science of reading. What we disagree with is how it is being translated to school districts. And as Corey did not directly say, but I think indirectly is saying, the amount of time that it is taking for our team of educators and Linda Johnson, who would otherwise be in classrooms with students, to now create a white paper that's really just confirming what we already know about our process and our structures here. What I will say is that one of the representatives that we met with did meet with the State Department, because that particular representative had been hearing from local area superintendents about basically the same concerns. And as a result of that meeting that he had with the State Department of Ed, they sent us documents of which we already had and still had many questions around that have not been answered. So we followed up with a list of questions, many of which Corey just described, the rubric, who's actually evaluating it, two mandated resources, or, the reason in which two mandated resources were picked, also have some pretty strong criticism. I think, if the waivers were not approved, what would be our next steps? What happens if our performance goes down? Where is the financial support there? I mean, I think real legitimate questions that we need answered. And I would have loved to have seen answered before the team was doing what they're doing, because, we have a responsibility to kids first. But unfortunately, this is what we're now doing. That said, we got a response that basically said that they want to be thoughtful about the responses or something like that, and will get back to us. And we have not heard since. I shared my questions with our area superintendents, who had already shared many of the same. They're not different. And I know that they are working also hard on, at minimum, asking for a pause. I know our team, who's committed so much time, is probably in a place where they just want it submitted and want to be able to move forward in many ways. But I think without having these questions answered, what's the rubric, right? So you had a rubric where you identified 7 programs. If you're sharing the exact same rubric, which is what they did, why are we then completing a waiver? Because we already know that our structure, along with others, would not be a part of that one of those 7. So I think those are legitimate questions that should have been answered, quite frankly, before they even asked us to complete a waiver. I mean, it's the same. We would never do that to kids. We wouldn't give the kids a test and not tell them what was going to be on it, or how it was going to be assessed, and what the impact is. But it is where we are right now. And so, I have seen my colleagues really, I know how much work we have to get done. And as you said, Sean, is we want to be sure that we get answers to parents and be clear, whether it's on our website or anywhere else, but we have work to do. And while we're spending energy on a waiver, we're not doing other things. And so that, at the end of the day, I know is one of the biggest frustrations of the team. But I also know that they will do the best that they possibly can so that we can move forward, and that, the State Department has a difficult time in saying that we're not doing right by our kids because we believe otherwise.
I appreciate it. And yeah, these hours could be better invested spending time with our kids and for our kids. I agree. And I'll just reiterate, I've said it before, that the sum total of what we spend on in hard dollars on state mandates far exceeds what we get back. And perhaps we should consider not doing that anymore. But I'm only one of 9 on a board, but that's my perspective at the current moment, given the nonsense they're putting you guys through. Any other questions on this topic? Let's move on to D, MTSS K-12 update.
So they're all connected. So we are very proud of the work that we're doing on MTSS K-12, and we wanted to take a minute to give you an update on that work. If you remember, in the spring, we had subcommittees, representative subcommittees, K-12, working on studying our current processes and then offering revisions. It was very collaborative and very representative. So we started the year with what we've been calling a reboot, because that's a nice, fun way to think about it, and have been working with the support of my team here, because we are central, so we get to go to everybody and see everybody, so we can offer that centralized support on growing our practices to be better and better. One of the new elements that we added as a team is something called Tier 1+, which means that when a teacher finds an area of growth for a student, or perhaps some missing conceptual understanding, they work with the team and put in place a Tier 1+ goal. It has a SMART goal. The teacher meets with the student X amount of times over a 6 to 8 week period on that goal, does progress monitoring, it's back to the committee whether or not the progress was made and the conceptual understanding has now been gained, so the student can go back to Tier 1, or perhaps the teacher recommends that there wasn't enough progress in enough time, and then Tier 2 with the specialist taking over and the teacher continuing in the classroom. So like a two-pronged approach is next in line. So we've been monitoring our numbers and supporting our teachers and our administrators in that work. We are really excited about the feedback that we're getting, both good and in some ways revisionist. There are things in the process that our teachers are saying, this seemed like it would be a good idea, but now that it's in practice, this form is the same as this form, so I'm duplicating the work. So what I'm really enjoying about this team and the way that this process is going, I've done this in other places, is that we really are hearing each other. We have a K-12 committee that brings those insights in. And when we can, as a team, we are making adjustments. So we really want our teachers to feel like they're a part of this reboot. It's not a top-down reboot. It's not about me. It's not about anyone on the screen. It's really about kids. And it's about making a structure that works most effectively for kids. And again, we ask a lot of our classroom teachers. Our classroom teachers have a lot of responsibilities. Not only are they doing all the curriculum and implementing the curriculum, they're assessing, they're giving feedback, they're writing report cards, and then they're also intervening when students need additional help. So there's a lot on them, and we want to make sure that when we're asking that of them, that we're creating a system that works and is most efficient. So that has been really exciting. The other update that I also want to add that goes with the same content of this update is that we have been engaged in intervisitation. This year has been exciting for us because it's the most normal year that I've been here. And not only have our teachers and our administrators been able to engage in staff development, we have been able to open back up to learning walks and observations like this. So for example, our teams across the district, across the levels, have been able to watch each other as they have data team meetings and as they have MTSS meetings, because when you watch someone else, you're able to have insights that you can't have when you're in the middle of it yourself, because when you're in the middle of it, you're in it, you can't really see yourself or reflect on different moves you're making. But now that we're watching each other and really watching each other, not to say that one school has it and another school needs to learn from them, we're all learning from each other because everybody brings something valuable to the table. So I just can't, my professional career in doing this work, this is the first time I've really seen implementation like this that really has felt collaborative and like we're learning from each other, and that we respect what everybody's bringing to the table and we can grow and learn from there. So really powerful. We're getting there. And really, this isn't something that ends. As much as we're making a big deal about our reboot, really systems should always be looking at these structures and thinking about how can we make sure we're aligned? Is there something we need to change? Are we really getting to all students? Are we catching all students? Our middle school children, do we know what to look for when they struggle? So that is something that systems do always work on. But for us, this reboot and realignment has really felt collaborative and is moving in the right direction. So if Jeff, Annie, or Linda wants to jump into that.
So it's been very exciting getting to visit and support, because one of our district priorities is related to our transitions. We've been visiting, Jeff and I have been visiting along with our middle school principals at times and our literacy specialists at times, or our math specialists, right? We've been trying to align that, and we've been seeing fifth grade experiences, and we've been thinking about how does that support our students moving up. We've had meetings up at our high school to talk about MTSS and transitioning up from middle school. So it's been an enlightening experience as well, because you're really getting into the culture and the community of the entire district as a whole when you're looking at something K-12. And we've been learning a lot from each other and trying to reduce those redundancies, like Corey mentioned, to help save time for our teachers, and so that way the work can be focused on what the kids need.
Jeff, can you talk a little bit about how you're looking at screeners in the middle school level, you and Annie?
Yeah, absolutely. So Annie and I are currently undergoing a small little committee of representatives from both middle schools. And really the question of the committee is, what do we hope to get out of a universal screener? Currently, we use the NWEA, the MAP, and that may be the answer. But what we realized is that it's been a very long time since we've really looked critically at whether that tool is giving teachers the knowledge and the information to support all students. So what we've done is we've pulled a small group together where we're going to be looking at a variety of screeners. Actually, our first committee meeting is this afternoon, and then we'll have monthly meetings after that. But what the goal of that committee is really to see what products are out there, and then really evaluate as a committee whether the current product we use is most effective or whether it might be time to switch to a different tool. So we are really going into that process with a very open mind, guided around that one key question of how to best support students through that tool.
Thank you, Jeff. And it's so important because our teachers, our middle school teachers, really use that data, and we want to make sure that it is the most meaningful data that they're getting. So it feels like almost like a make and take. Once I see this data, then I know what to teach next, and making sure that there's a clear line between the data that we're seeing on the NWEA and the implementation of those grade level standards, right? That is our job. Our job is to make sure when a student leaves that they have understood those standards for whatever content area it is. So our teachers are used to using the screener, but we want to make sure that their time is most efficiently used and that they feel most supported and see a direct line from one to the next. And like Jeff said beautifully, we don't know the answer yet, but it is time for us to do the study so that we can tell our teachers and our community and all of you, of course, that we see a direct connection between this and the work that's happening in classrooms. So very exciting. Did that last year at elementary. This is now our turn middle school.
And Corey, I just add one quick thing to that, because I just want to make sure that everyone hears that part of that committee, it is our building administrators, but it's also our specialists in the building, and it's our classroom teachers across various subject areas, not just math and ELA. So we really are trying to look at it holistically and get a lot of different viewpoints, but keeping the teacher's perspective kind of right there in the midst of the conversation.
Thank you. Right.
Any questions, Rachel?
Just a quick question for my clarity. Is AIMSweb one of those universal screeners? Is it just for literacy, or is it for math as well?
AIMSweb,
That's something that we'll study. Oh, sorry, Corey.
yeah, AIMSweb is a universal screener. It can be used in middle school as well. Right now, we're using it at the elementary level, K-5.
So before
For literacy.
Yeah, for literacy.
We still have, and we still have the NWEA, and so AIMSweb for mathematics is K1, and then we have NWEA math 2 through 5th grade at the elementary level, and then 6 through 8 at the middle school level.
So Rachel, if I could just clarify just a couple of things, because it can be a little bit tricky with the universal screeners and what's mandated and what's not, and what's approved and what's not. So the universal screeners, and I'm not in Corey and Linda's seat anymore, but if I understand it correctly, it is mandated at grades K through 3, correct?
Literacy.
Yes, K through 3. And there is a list of universal screeners you must pick from those grades. And so in the past, we were actually using NWEA, which was approved in those grades, but then without knowing the change in universal screener list that the state was going to have, we elected to move to AIMSweb for a variety of reasons. I'm sure Corey and Linda can list them all, but for a variety of reasons. With the exception of grade 3, K through 3, we do have universal screeners for 4 through 8 because we believe that they're equally important. K-8, it's just that you're mandated to use a particular one in those K through 3 grades. Further, what Annie is about to tell you is that we are always assessing to determine whether or not the universal screener is giving us the information that is the most helpful. And I'll let Annie speak to why she thinks it is or isn't, or what the study is. And so, you know, it could vary from, you know, from place to place or grade level to grade level, depending upon what the area it is that you're hoping, the information that you're hoping to gain. Annie?
So yeah, when we're looking at the screeners, what we'll discover as a team, and that's why when Jeff mentioned that we use NWA now, and that very well may be the one that we continue with. But in that review of assessment practices, we want to make sure that we're using the one that will give us the most information of the things that we value as a school district and the things that we need. So like mastery of standards, checkpoints, all nationally normed, right? That it gives us the best information. So Ames Web certainly does have some assessments that can be used at the middle school level. So that would be part of our review, because we don't want to double up on assessments either. So we want to make sure that our students are engaging in one that will give us the most information without having to have any redundancies or multiple assessments, if that makes sense.
Oh, thank you so much. It was very clear. Thank you.
Yeah, it's nice to see that through line and using these metrics to actually do something with our curriculum, which is fantastic. Again, great to see. Any other questions on this topic before we move forward? All right, we've got our last one. E, math placement grades 5 through 8.
One of our favorite topics. And actually, Linda and Jeff have a parent presentation on
Wednesday
at
11 a.m.
11 o'clock. Okay. So we've done a lot of work in the past 2 years. This week is my 2-year anniversary, in case anyone was wondering.
Congratulations.
How long I've been here. Wednesday. So I'm going to let Linda start talking about this process. She and Jeff have done a ton of work with this, with all the representatives, K-12. So take it away.
Happy to. Jeff, do you want me to pop up the slide or just speak to it?
I'll probably just speak to it if that's
Okay.
all right. Yeah.
So it's actually a nice segue from talking about universal screeners into our math placement, because what I'm going to speak about first are the different sources that we use in determining placement into the various grade levels, the various courses. So as a group, the district math team has been meeting over several months, either with Jeff, myself, together, and first to reflect on the process from last year. You know, we take a look at what worked well, what might not have worked well. We look at the feedback that we got from parents, teachers, administrators, and then we look at the current year and what we might want to continue and what we might want to change. An important part of that process, which Jeff may speak about next, is looking at our students in their current placement. So we do start this process all the way back in the fall, where we say, okay, we place students, for example, into 6 advanced or 6 regular math. Let's take a look at that and see how the students are doing. And that's good information for us as we do reflect on the process and plan for the current year. So as always, our goal of the team is to create a process that we think truly is fair to our students, fair to our community, and that we're finding the best fit for the mathematician at that point in time. And I say in that point in time because we know students can change. They can change and grow over the summer. And then they enter 6th or 7th grade and they have some different math skills. So again, that's part of the process that we develop, is making sure that we do look at current placement, current data, and reflect on the placement where students are at. And we do want to make sure that where the students are placed is that they can be the most successful in learning the concepts and the skills for that course. So sources, we use 3 main sources from rising 5th grade all the way up to 8th grade. All grade levels, we use the NWEA map. We use curriculum-based assessments, and we use the Journey to Independence. The NWA is a standardized assessment. And then we look at curriculum-based assessments, which are primarily our unit assessments or our chapter assessments that are collected really from the beginning of the year up into the point when we start looking at developing criteria. So those are assessments are representative of students learning as a result of what's being taught in the classrooms, and it's over time. So it's not the one day, the one setting, or one skill, one concept. It's really what they've been learning over a series of lessons. And then we have what we call the Journey to Independence, which is really like a holistic view of what our mathematicians are doing in the classroom. It's the habits of a mathematician, if you will. It's their ability to persevere, their ability to problem solve. Another example is ability to attend to precision. And when using a ruler, for example, are you really starting at the zero, so on and so forth. And our teachers collect evidence throughout the year on how mathematicians work day in and day out. And then they reflect on that and complete a journey, what we call a journey to independence on each individual student. And it really is a journey of learning, a journey of representing what mathematicians are doing in our classrooms. And then from there, we pull all the data together and we establish a criteria. We establish a criteria for each course. And we also establish a criteria for a waiver. So we will have a waiver process again this year. Parents will learn more about that as we speak on Wednesday and our presentation, and then share out information through the different data sources. But there will be a certain cut score to enter into a course, and then there'll be certain cut scores to enter into a waiver process. I do want to add one note is that oftentimes there's a misconception that one criteria, one score is going to make or break a student's placement. And that's not the way we've developed our process. We really do look at multiple measures over multiple months, and then we come up with a criteria that represents, again, that placement where we think a student can be most successful. Jeff, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit about the timeline and how we're going to communicate out.
So I think the other piece, just to reiterate that Linda was saying is, all of those areas that we're assessing, they do take place over the course of many, many months. So I just want to reiterate one more time that it's not a one data point, once and done. And there's not one single indicator that will keep a student from being able to access or be placed into an accelerated course. So one of the things that we do from the very beginning of the year is really look at all of those unit assessments. In grade 6 specifically, we also include the addition of 2 critical thinking tasks that we pull out as a separate measure on every single one of our unit assessments. So that's something consistent that shows directly what's linked to what's being taught in the class every single unit throughout the year until our math placement process is completed. Linda did say we talk about that winter score. We use our winter NWEA score. That's our standardized score, is another indicator. And then in the spring, each of our different grade levels undergo either one assessment or maybe there's a couple assessments about critical thinking. So in grade 5, we call that our concept and application task. In grade 6, we call that our algebra readiness check because we're trying to see who might be ready for algebra in grade 7. And then in grade 7, we call it a critical thinking task. But really what all of those things are doing is really trying to just look at the ability for students to critically think, to problem solve, and to look at the mathematics from a more non-routine standpoint. So that's another set of indicators that we use. And that really goes up and through April. And then by May is when we'll have our placement decision made. Prior to that, though, it also is important for the community to know that we go through an audit process. So before we finalize any letters and send them out to families, the building-based teams actually come together and look at the full list of students that even after all of the criteria and all the placement numbers have been put out there, the team comes together and asks, did that make sense for every single kid on the list? And sometimes the answer is no. And so there might be a student that someone really feels should be an accelerated, and the criteria maybe didn't quite put them there, but we have a building-based discussion around that and we communicate that accordingly to the family. So that's important for everyone to hear. Once the letters go out in May, there is again that waiver process that Linda talked about. Because once again, we know that these criteria, there might be students that are right on the bubble. So our waiver process is being able to figure out kind of who those students are on the bubble and give the families an opportunity to decide themselves whether or not they would like to waive into the accelerated course. Now, that's not the end of our placement process. It actually goes all the way back into the fall of the next school year. And that is when students that were either kind of right on that bubble on that waiver list, or maybe there was a parent that reached out with a question, they get put on what's called a watch list. And then our middle school math teachers really look at that list carefully and watch the students to make sure that they really are appropriately placed in that course, and then communicate with the families that had reached out with a question or concern. But we do look at anyone that is on that waiver list, even if a parent did not reach out, because we also believe that, you know, maybe there's a family that did not advocate on behalf of the student for whatever reason, but we still want to look at that watch list. And if we feel internally that a student would be better served in a different course, we will absolutely reach out as well. So the placement process really starts in the fall of one year, and it really goes all the way into the fall of the next year. And just a quick plug for additional, and Corey mentioned at the beginning, we do have a math placement parent presentation this Wednesday. It is live at 11 a.m. An email did go out. We'll send another email out to the community as a reminder tomorrow. Part of that is a question form. So if people have questions on the math placement process, they can fill that out ahead of time. And we'll keep that form open a week. It will be recorded and posted on the RPS curriculum YouTube channel. So parents can either watch it live or watch it after the fact and reference anything that is mentioned in the video.
And Jeff, I'll add on, a couple weeks ago, we had a math pathways parent presentation. We did that intentionally, had the pathways first, placement second. So if parents, community members have questions about those math pathways, they can go to the YouTube channel and watch that presentation.
Yeah, that's a great point, Linda. And just to make that clear, that goes all the way through high school. A lot of the feedback we were hearing from parents is we recognize that the pathways for math can be a little complicated. So in the past, we put placement and pathways kind of together in one presentation, but it really felt like it was important to pull that other presentation out and really just give a lot of information about all the various pathways. So a parent can watch and actually follow, depending on what course in grade 9 as an example, they could then follow a pathway for what that would mean for them by senior year. So we really spent a good chunk of time in that. So please do watch that if you are interested.
And if I can conclude for the two of you, thank you so much. What I hope that you are hearing in this description is how much thought has gone into how our kids are developing as mathematicians across a year and across multiple years. If there are any concerns after watching the videos, we have a team both at the school level and here that is more than happy to talk to parents, because kids develop differently and they might develop a math interest later, a passion for math, and there are definitely ways and opportunities and pathways for doubling up at times. There's many, many ways that you can go about it. I don't want to take any of Jeff's thunder. He is an expert on this. There are protocols and structures in place. We are more than happy to help explain that to any parent. So transition into 5th grade does not mean you're locked into one pathway. There are a lot of different options. And we believe that this structure that we're using, which really is child focused and really does continue into the fall, there is movement made when it needs to be made, which gives kids opportunities over the summer to grow, that it is taking what is best for students in that moment at heart, and it allows for the human element of development around math. So we're happy to take any questions on this topic.
Any questions? Rachel? No, she's good. I just thank you. The process has become a lot more transparent and a lot more easy to understand in the last couple of years. It's always been a source of consternation for parents when they don't understand that, you know, that what they're doing right now can change going forward. They always thought they were locked into a pathway and could never get out of that. And this is a lot more transparent, just a lot easier to understand. So pointing people at that YouTube link would be great.
Sean, it looks like Amy's hand may be up.
Oh, there she is. Go ahead.
I just wanted to applaud your diligence and your dedication to
Amy, could you just speak up a little bit? Hard to hear you.
sure I'll do what I can. I just wanted to applaud your diligence and your dedication to
Since we heard the word applaud, we really want to hear you now. So it's a little bit hard. Maybe you, if you take us off speaker
How about this? Is this better?
a little bit.
Yes. Okay. Just want to applaud your diligence and your dedication to each student. I love that there are multiple assessments over the course of a year. And I'm just wondering, how often do you see changes between the classes that you're realizing, oh, maybe we got this fit a little bit wrong and this isn't quite right? Is that something that's happening a little bit more than you would like, or do you feel that that's a very seldom occurrence?
Yeah, I can certainly answer that. Because that is something that I look at and kind of monitor over the course of the fall. And I can say that there are students in the past 2 years that have moved up to an accelerated class and vice versa, a student that might have been in an accelerated class that moved to one that was a grade level class. I wouldn't say that there's more movement than I would like. I think one of our goals is to make sure that the student is placed in a course or is taking a course where they have both accessibility to the content, but also the right level of challenge. So it's that fine balance, which is why, you know, we have the ability to move. But I can verify that every fall there is absolutely movement. I will say the movement in grade, to be fully transparent, grade 6 and 7 is a little easier. By the time you get to 8th grade, we have 3 very distinct courses. And there is movement as well, but it usually has to happen much earlier in the school year because we've got grade level standard 8, high school standards algebra 1 for another course, and then geometry high school standards for a third. So there has been movement in there, but it usually in 8th grade happens much sooner in the school year. 6th and 7th can happen a little bit more into the school year within that first quarter.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Nope. I thank y'all for your time. Sounds like we're ready to adjourn this meeting and let everybody get on with the rest of their day.